I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays.
Vais et je viens entre tes rangs.
A school shooting inspired a song too shocking for US radio. A breathy French track was banned by the BBC. A Stones classic faced protests for brutal lyrics. These 20 banned rock stars defined the 1970s. Number 1 will change how you see music forever. 20. The Boomtown Rats.
I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays.
When Bob Geldof wrote I Don't Like Mondays in 1979, he wasn't chasing charts. He was reacting to tragedy. The song was inspired by 16-year-old Brenda Ann Spencer, who opened fire on a California elementary school, killing 2 adults and injuring 8 children. When she was asked why, she chillingly replied, "I don't like Mondays." The track rocketed to number 1 in the UK, but in America, stations refused to play it. Radio executives feared it glorified violence, while grieving parents campaigned against it. In San Diego, the city where the shooting happened, the song was banned outright. Yet, despite censorship, the record sold millions and remains one of the most infamous examples of rock colliding with real-life horror. If one song about violence could silence US airwaves, imagine what would happen when erotic whispers made governments and even the Vatican furious. 19. Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin. When Je t'aime, moi non plus first hit radios in 1969, it sounded like nothing before. Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin's breathy duet was filled with erotic moans, hushed gasps, and lyrics that blurred the line between song and bedroom recording. By 1970, it had been banned in Spain, Sweden, Brazil, and the UK. The BBC declared it unfit for broadcast. Vatican Radio condemned it outright, forcing Italian distributors to pull thousands of copies. Yet controversy only fueled sales. In France, it sold over 750,000 copies in months, topping charts across Europe. The song's notoriety became so great that it turned Serge into both a national hero and cultural villain. Jane Birkin admitted she was mortified when the track first played on air, but history cemented it as a rebellious classic. But if Sex on Vinyl could outrage Europe, lyrics about slavery and drugs would shake America even harder. 18. The Rolling Stones. When the Rolling Stones released Brown Sugar in 1971, it shot straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the lyrics, mixing references to slavery, interracial sex, and drug use, sparked immediate backlash. Critics called it brutal exploitation set to rock and roll. The BBC initially restricted airplay, while some US stations outright banned it. Even decades later, the song remains divisive. In 2021, the Stones quietly dropped it from live performances after growing protests. Keith Richards later admitted, "I never would have written that today." Despite bans, Brown Sugar sold millions and became one of the band's defining tracks. The contradiction of massive commercial success paired with moral outrage made it a cornerstone of rock controversy. And if one song could divide radio stations for 50 years, the next band would bring chaos by attacking the very heart of Britain's monarchy. 17. The Sex Pistols.
God save the Queen! The fascist regime!
When God Save the Queen dropped in May 1977, Britain was celebrating the monarch's Silver Jubilee. Instead of joining the party, The Sex Pistols released a snarling anthem that called the monarchy a fascist regime and sneered, "No future in England's dreaming." The BBC banned it instantly. Major retailers refused to stock it. Yet, despite zero radio play, the record still surged to number 2 on the UK singles chart. Some claim it was deliberately kept from the top spot to avoid embarrassment. On June 7, the Pistols tried to perform on a boat near Parliament. Chaos broke out, police arrests followed, and headlines branded them national enemies. The scandal cemented punk's reputation as dangerous, uncontrollable, and defiantly anti-establishment. And while the Pistols attacked political royalty, another band was being censored for something more primal: raw sexual energy hidden inside their songs. 16. The Doors.
Love me 2 times, babe. Love me twice today.
By the late 1960s, the Doors had become symbols of counterculture rebellion. But it was in the early 70s that censors truly cracked down. Their hit Love Me 2 Times was banned on many US stations for being too sexually explicit. Jim Morrison's stage antics, grinding, shouting, improvising lewd lyrics, only made matters worse. The tipping point came in 1969 when Morrison allegedly exposed himself during a Miami concert. He was charged with lewd behavior, sparking nationwide outrage. Florida banned the Doors from performing, and several states canceled their shows. Morrison fought court battles until his death in 1971. Despite censorship, the band's album sold millions, with Morrison Hotel, 1970, hitting number 4 on the Billboard charts. The bands only deepened their outlaw mystique. Yet, while the Doors battled obscenity charges, another rock star leaned into shock deliberately, weaponizing rebellion as his brand. 15. Alice Cooper.
But we got no choice. All you girls and boys.
In 1972, Alice Cooper stormed the charts with School's Out. The single hit number 1 in the UK and reached the US top 10, selling more than 1 million copies. But teachers and parents were horrified. Some schools banned the song outright, fearing it encouraged violence and classroom anarchy. Alice leaned into the scandal. His concerts featured guillotines, snakes, fake blood, and mock executions. British MP Leo Abs even tried to ban his shows, calling them sick and dangerous. Tickets kept selling. In Germany, his posters were defaced with warnings, but still his 1972 European tour sold out. Alice later admitted, "The more they hated me, the more the kids loved me." His blend of glam, horror, and rebellion made him a global lightning rod. And while Alice Cooper thrived on theatrical chaos, another group faced censorship for turning pure blues into unabashed sexual thunder. 14. Led Zeppelin.
You need cooling. Baby, I'm not fooling.
By 1970, Led Zeppelin had become the loudest band on earth, selling out arenas and outselling even the Beatles in US record sales. But their breakthrough hit Whole Lotta Love rattled more than amplifiers. The BBC banned it from radio because of its orgasmic moans, courtesy of Robert Plant's vocals layered with psychedelic effects. In America, several conservative stations followed suit, calling it obscene noise. Ironically, censorship only fueled curiosity. The track still climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, helping the album Led Zeppelin II sell over 12 million copies worldwide. Critics blasted the group for musical pornography, but fans turned them into gods of excess. And excess was exactly the point. Zeppelin's shows became legendary, whiskey-soaked, groupie-fueled, deafening spectacles. But while Zeppelin fought bands over raw lust, another flamboyant star shocked audiences with something very different: glitter, camp, and Coded Rebellion. 13. Elton John.
Hey kids, shake loose together, spotlight hitting something that you know.
In the early 1970s, Elton John was unstoppable. Between 1972 and 1975, he scored 7 consecutive #1 albums in the US, a feat unmatched at the time. But some of his tracks ran into censorship headaches. Benny and the Jets, released in 1974, was criticized for what stations interpreted as drug references. More controversially, when Elton came out as bisexual in a 1976 Rolling Stone interview, radio bans hit harder than lyrics ever did. In America's Bible Belt, entire networks pulled his records claiming moral decline. The backlash didn't dent his sales. In fact, Elton's flamboyant costumes, glitter glasses, and defiant stage presence only amplified his legend. By the end of the decade, he had sold more than 150 million records globally. Yet, while Elton toyed with pop glamour, punk returned to the scene with even more venom and a second strike at the establishment. 12. Iggy Pop and the Stooges. By the early 1970s, Iggy Pop had become the godfather of punk, but his wild stage shows terrified censors. Known for rolling in broken glass, smearing himself with peanut butter, and inciting riots, Iggy turned concerts into chaos. His band The Stooges pushed raw aggression with songs like Search and Destroy, 1973, which was banned on several US stations for its violent imagery. Promoters often canceled gigs out of fear, and radio programmers dismissed the group as unsafe for broadcast. Yet that danger became their legend. Though commercial success was limited at the time, their influence later exploded, shaping punk, grunge, and alternative rock. As Iggy himself said, "I wanted to be so free that the world would freak out." There is another band that would terrify parents with riffs so heavy they were branded messengers of Satan. 11. Black Sabbath. When Black Sabbath released their self-titled debut in 1970, critics called it the sound of hell. Their use of tritones, historically dubbed the devil's interval, combined with lyrics about doom and demons, led to instant hysteria. Parents burned records. Churches held protests. In America's Bible Belt, schools banned the band's albums outright, warning kids they would summon Satan. Yet the bands only fed their legend. By 1971, Paranoid topped the UK charts and sold over 4 million copies in the US alone. Ozzy Osbourne's wild persona, biting the head off a bat in 1982, cemented the myth and made them symbols of danger. Critics saw them as corruptors of youth, but to fans, Sabbath had given heavy metal a voice. And while Sabbath thrived on demonic imagery, another rocker was banned not for darkness, but for walking straight into taboo territory of sex and identity. 10. Lou Reed.
Take a walk on the wild side. Oh, honey.
In 1972, Lou Reed released Walk on the Wild Side, a song that casually introduced mainstream radio to transgender characters, drug dealers, and hustlers. The line "giving head" slipped past censors at first, but once they noticed, many stations banned it. In conservative America, this was explosive. Despite censorship, the track climbed to number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100, shocking executives who expected outrage to kill sales. Reed said later he never thought it would even get radio play, yet it became his signature song. The Velvet Underground, Reed's earlier band, had already been banned in multiple cities for songs about heroin and sadomasochism. By the 70s, Reed embraced controversy as survival. His work gave marginalized voices space in rock, even if radio stations slammed the door shut. But Lou's subtle rebellion would look tame next to a band that nearly lost a hit over a single brand name.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes just...
In 1970, the Kinks released Lola, a witty, playful song about a romance with a transgender woman. It instantly raised eyebrows, but that wasn't the first problem. The BBC banned the original recording because it mentioned Coca-Cola, citing strict rules against brand promotion. Ray Davies had to fly back from a US tour to re-record the lyric as Cherry Cola just to secure airplay. Even then, Lola faced bans from conservative stations over its gender-bending storyline. Yet controversy pushed it higher, reaching number 2 in the UK and number 9 in the US. The song later became a cultural landmark, celebrated for breaking taboos while wrapped in a sing-along chorus. Ray Davies once laughed that the BBC probably saved the song by banning it. And while the Kinks used humor to dodge censorship, the next band faced government bans because their anthem became a weapon of protest. 8. Pink Floyd.
We don't need no education.
By 1979, Pink Floyd had built one of rock's most ambitious concept albums, The Wall. Its centerpiece, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2, featured a children's choir chanting, "We don't need no education." It shot to number 1 in 10 countries, selling over 4 million singles worldwide. But in apartheid South Africa, the song became more than a hit. It became a protest anthem. Students adapted its chorus to rally against racial segregation in schools. The government panicked. By 1980, South Africa banned the track, calling it subversive. The irony? A song written about rigid British schooling ended up fueling rebellion thousands of miles away. Bans only amplified its legend, embedding it in global protest culture. And while Floyd's rebellion was political, another star provoked controversy with style, gender, and provocative lyrics that blurred the line between art and scandal. 7. David Bowie.
I could escape this feeling with my China girl.
In the early 70s, David Bowie was already reinventing rock with his Ziggy Stardust persona. But his 1977 collaboration with Iggy Pop, China Girl, later made famous by Bowie himself in the 80s, first stirred trouble. Some radio stations flagged the song for racial insensitivity in its original 1977 form, seeing its lyrics as dangerously provocative. But Bowie was no stranger to bans. His earlier songs like John, I'm Only Dancing, 1972, were pulled from BBC airplay for overt homosexual themes. In the US, his open bisexuality in interviews fueled boycotts by conservative networks. Despite censorship, Bowie dominated charts worldwide. By 1976, Station to Station and Young Americans cemented him as both a provocateur and a superstar. He once said, "I'm only popular because I force society to face itself." And while Bowie used sexuality and identity to provoke, the next figure wielded razor-sharp satire and infuriated watchdog groups across America. 6. Frank Zappa.
I want a nasty little Jewish princess with long bony nails.
Frank Zappa thrived on controversy. In 1979, his song Jewish Princess provoked outrage, condemned by the Anti-Defamation League for perpetuating offensive stereotypes. Radio stations across the US banned it outright. Zappa mocked the censorship, saying the ADL couldn't take a joke. It wasn't his first run-in with censors. His 1973 album, Overnight Sensation, was plastered with sexual innuendo, drawing bans from family-friendly stations. Zappa relished it, insisting he was holding up a mirror to society's hypocrisy. Despite controversy, he sold millions of records and built one of rock's most devoted cult followings. By the late 70s, Zappa was already warning of censorship's dangers, foreshadowing his 1980s battles with the PMRC. His banned tracks became rallying cries for free speech in music. And while Zappa battled watchdogs with wit, the next brand embraced pure electricity, only to be branded by preachers as ambassadors of hellfire. 5. AC/DC.
I'm on the highway to hell. On the highway.
By 1979, AC/DC had unleashed Highway to Hell, a record that made them global stars and cemented Bon Scott's legacy before his tragic death in 1980. The album sold over 7 million copies in the US alone, but the title track terrified American conservatives. Churches in the South claimed the band promoted Satanism. Preachers called them Antichrist Devil's Children, twisting the band's initials into a curse. Several schools banned their t-shirts, and radio stations across states like Texas and Alabama refused to play the song. Ironically, the hysteria boosted their fame. Concert attendance soared, and AC/DC's outlaw status made them the poster children for hard rock rebellion. Scott laughed at the accusation, saying, "We're singing about the grind of the road, not hellfire." And while AC/DC battled religious outrage, another band courted scandal with glam, sexuality, and lyrics far too suggestive for family radio. 4. Queen.
Oh, you gonna let it all hang out, fat bottom girl.
Queen's legacy is untouchable today, but in the late 70s they were anything but safe. Their 1978 anthem Fat Bottom Girls climbed into the US top 40 but was banned on family-oriented radio stations for sexual innuendo. Lyrics celebrating women's bodies openly clashed with conservative values of the era. But controversy didn't hurt. The single was released alongside Bicycle Race, and the band staged a publicity stunt with 65 nude women riding bicycles at Wimbledon Stadium. It caused outrage in tabloids but ensured massive global attention. By 1979, Queen had sold over 45 million albums worldwide. Freddie Mercury's flamboyance and refusal to conform to norms only added to the fire. He became a lightning rod for debates over sexuality and censorship. And while Queen blended sexuality with spectacle, the next act incited bands simply for embodying raw aggression and smashing through generational divides. 3. The Who.
People try to put us to down. Talking about my generation just because.
When The Who roared onto stages in the early 70s, they were already infamous for smashing instruments. But censorship didn't come from their destruction. It came from their words. My Generation continued to face radio bans well into the decade. The BBC feared its stuttering vocal line could be seen as mocking disabled people, while US stations worried it encouraged drug use. Ironically, bans only solidified its power. The song became an anthem for alienated youth, still selling hundreds of thousands of copies years after release. By 1973, Quadrophenia brought even more controversy, with fights breaking out at screenings of the film adaptation. Police often shadowed The Who's shows, expecting riots. Pete Townshend later admitted their energy was designed to scare adults. It worked. Bands made them dangerous heroes. But if smashed guitars frightened parents, the next artist terrified censors by hurling racial slurs into a rock manifesto. 2. Patti Smith.
Baby was a black sheep, baby was a whore. Baby got big and baby got big.
In 1978, Patti Smith dropped Easter, a record that carried the single Rock and Roll N-Word. The title alone detonated controversy. Radio stations across the US refused to play it. Some chains boycotted the album outright. Smith, however, defended the track, saying she was using the slur to provoke and reclaim rebellion itself, outside of society. That's where I wanna be. Critics were divided. Some hailed her bravery, others condemned her recklessness. Despite bans, Easter sold over 500,000 copies in the US, becoming her best-selling record. Patti's confrontational art blurred poetry and punk, and she refused to censor herself to fit into the industry mold. Her scandal wasn't just a footnote, it cemented her as punk's high priestess, daring audiences to face uncomfortable truths. And if Smith risked everything with one word, the next band clashed with censorship for embedding drug-fueled visions inside their most ambitious masterpiece. 1. The Beatles.
I read the news today, oh boy.
Though the Beatles broke up in 1970, their shadow stretched over the decade. One song in particular kept stirring censorship. A Day in the Life from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. First banned by the BBC in 1967 for drug references like I'd Love to Turn You On, it remained restricted throughout the 1970s. Stations feared its orchestral chaos and veiled LSD nods would corrupt youth, yet the band never killed its reach. By 1978, Sgt. Pepper had sold over 32 million copies worldwide, securing its place as one of rock's most celebrated albums. John Lennon later confirmed the drug undertones, but also insisted it reflected the surrealism of the era itself. The Beatles' clash with censorship proved even the world's biggest band wasn't untouchable. If anything, it showed how art could be silenced publicly, yet still thrive privately in millions of homes. These 20 stories prove rock music in the 1970s wasn't just sound, it was danger, scandal, and rebellion. If you love hidden music history, check our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking, untold rock legends every week.